What's up, guys? It's Chuki here, back with another card game content related video. Today I got a deck profile for Gravekeepers, more specifically Gravekeeper Stun. I think that after looking on YouTube at different deck profiles, that especially this format is just lacking content for Gravekeepers, and I think there's still a good deck at shutting down fundamental plays in a lot of the decks that are currently playing right now. I'm going to go over a few different cards. A lot of them are pretty standard. If you have any other additional questions, just feel free to reach out, either comment or message me. I'll start with the main deck. Start us off, we got our searchers, which are 3 Gravekeepers Spy, 3 Gravekeepers Recruiter, and 2 Commandant. It's pretty standard that decks play 3 of each of the first 2. I've seen different builds with 1 Commandant. I've seen 3 Commandants. I like to play 2. He's kind of there when you need him, and he's not there when you don't. It's a good 2100 beater, but he's not dark, and he is really has no additional effect. So there's no real point to play him over some of the other cards. And then to finish out the Gravekeepers monsters, 2 Gravekeepers Descendant, and then 1 Gravekeepers Assailant. This card is really good when you need to run over big boss monsters, as well as just kind of change and slow up the game state. And he's also just additional search for Spy to pull out or for Recruiter to grab. He's also another alert target. So Assailant, I think at 1 is really good. Descendant is standard. He's your consistent form of removal. He's going to allow you to open up your opponent's board, kind of break it based off of what you search with Spy. And then the combo essentially is Descendant and Recruiter, pop him, search pretty much any one of the deck's Gravekeepers cards besides Spy. So that's it with Gravekeepers monsters. Next, to wrap it up, we got 2 Fossil Dino. I like to play 2. I think 3 is a lot, especially if you're matched up against something like True Draco. You're basically drawing a useless card. Those are tribute summons. You're not really going to be able to get over that. This is going to do nothing for you. So 2 is good. I side the 3rd. You'll see that when I go over the side deck. But finishing up, 2 Malefic Stardust and 1 Malefic Cyberend. So I messed around with the ratios, looked at different ways to play this, but I think these guys as boss monsters are just too good to not play in the deck. Malefic Stardust, he's I believe the only Malefic monster with an actual kind of a secondary effect that's beneficial, and that is field spells cannot be destroyed. So basically, you rip Necro Valley or Commandant into Necro Valley, summon this guy, special summon him from your hand by banishing a Stardust Dragon, and you are basically locking your opponent because they need to first figure out a way to get rid of Malefic Stardust and then go into whatever they need to do to get rid of Necro Valley. It's really funny when people do like Twin Twisters and they'll target the Necro Valley and then one of your other face downs, and you have Malefic Stardust out. You kind of just lock them up, and they really only basically discard for an MST. So for our spells, that's 16 monsters, by the way. Just keep it low, keep it the ones that you need, essentially. Next, we got Royal Tribute, Gravekeeper Stell. I don't like the card, the continuous one that prevents special summoning. I play one of the traps, I'll show you that. But basically, I think that card, I believe it's Imperial Tombs is the trap. And then I forget what the name of the continuous spell is. It's a new card, but I don't think it's worth it. It's kind of like Ties of the Brethren. Like, you draw it, you're ripping cards in a grind game, and that's gonna basically sign your death wish. It's over at that point. And then next, 3 Necro Valley. I mean, this card's been eroded 7 times, 8 times. Basically, your opponent cannot move cards in the graveyard. They cannot activate effects that would change types or attributes in the graveyard. Is the current way it stands. And then also your Gravekeepers get a nice 500 boost, which is very, very huge. Turns your Gravekeepers monsters into 1700 or 2000 beaters. And like I said, Commandant goes to 21. Next, for our draw cards, 2 Potted Desires. I think 3 is just too much. It'll end up bricking, and you'll draw when you don't need it. 3 Potted Duality. I mean, it's just so good in a stun deck. I mean, just to be able to pick and choose what cards you want and potentially use that or Commandant to bait before you go into Desires. Any Ash Blossoms or something like that. Really, really good. Only 1 Allure of Darkness, and then 1 Upstart Goblin. I definitely would move this up to 2. I just currently don't have one, so I play Upstart right now, which I think honestly I would keep, even if I got a second Allure, just because Upstart's so good in progressing your game state. I mean, drawing that 1 card and then working through whatever you pick up, whether that's a Pot of Desires, Duality, or an Allure, is really good. 1 Raigeki, and then 1 Book of Moon to finish up the spells. I think Book of Moon's really good in this deck because you have cards like Spy, where it's face down and you flip it face up, you get its effect. You can Book of Moon and then run that effect again, which is fantastic. Gravekeepers is just phenomenal. No Monster Reborn because Necro Valley, that would basically outwardly make it useless in this deck. Yeah, I think Book of Moon is a really good spell card to run. I thought about Ties of the Brethren, like I mentioned. I just don't think that it's a very consistent card in terms of it's pretty conditional. And also, I would probably have to run another Gravekeeper target just because I'm running Desires. So it really would just kind of mess up the whole flow of the deck that I currently have. Next, we have Solemn Brigade. So only 2 Solemn Strikes. I'll get into that, but Solemn Judgment and then Solemn Warning. So 2 Solemn Strike, I think 3 is just too much. Plus, you're running some other trap cards to kind of stop summons in particular. And then you have different cards in your side deck to kind of get through monster effects. So it's really just kind of focusing around effect negation and then also, gearing towards stopping those big summons. 1 Imperial Tombs and Necro Valley, just like I said with a continuous card, and then also something like Ties of the Brethren. You just aren't always going to draw this when you need it. I mean, it's really nice to have it first turn and kind of roll into your combos with this good protection, but at the same time, like, you draw it in the middle of a grind game when you could be drawing something like this while you have, nothing except Necro Valley out. Just dropping this guy on the board, like, completely changes the state of the game if they only have a few cards out, compared to something like this where, it's a dead draw. So only 1, still a good card. I think that it's kind of like the Glad Beast Chariot. So one of those I think does what it needs to do. 1 Compulse, 1 Torrential, 2 Bottomless, and then 1 Heavy Storm Duster. So I think that Heavy Storm Duster is really good in this deck because you are running consistent forms of removal with Descendant. However, pesky back rows are, always still going to be a thing. Setting this first turn and blowing up 2 back row or blowing up a field spell in a back row is just, it's always good. I like it a lot more. I like this card a lot more than Twin Twisters, just because, I'm willing to wait and, play a slower game state and make smaller plays just to make sure that I can get this off without wasting another precious card, because every card in this deck is pretty essential, and you don't really want to just be giving up free cards. There are times where something like Pot of Duality or a Pot of Desires or a Stell, something like one of these cards where it's basically, this is what you would be discarding for cost. This is like the worst it gets in terms of, dead draws or something like that, because if you draw this and this, you gotta basically make choices depending on whether or not you have a field spell out, is kind of how it goes with that. So that's it for the main deck. I believe I run 10 traps, 14 spells, 16 monsters. I think that's a pretty solid ratio. It allows for pretty consistent draws. You kind of want a diverse opening hand. You don't want to draw a lot of one thing. I think all the traps, I think 2 Bottomless is solid because of the way that the game's going right now. It basically kind of also gives you outs in every sense towards a masterpiece. So you have different ways for trap removal and monster effect removal, and then you also have different ways to get around it with a spell card. So I mean, I think that's really important looking into the future of this format, rolling into the next one. So now on for the side deck. The side deck and the extra deck are definitely incomplete, but they're at a point where I would take them to a tournament and I would kind of play with them, given I'm not able to find anything else. So first off, 2 hand traps. I would probably bump this up to another effective Veiler, maybe another Ghost Ogre. I don't really like Ash Blossom. I think Ash Blossom is a really good card. But realistically in this deck, I like Ghost Ogre. I really, really do. I think it's one thing to negate the effect, but some effects don't always really get stopped by that negation, you know, because you're not destroying the card. Whereas Ghost Ogre is that immediate, you drop it, you're destroying any of those continuous spells or traps or monsters that are activating effects. 1 Fossil Dyna. So I side that 3rd Fossil Dyna just in case I'm going against a special summon heavy deck. 1 Gravekeeper's Guard. I think Guard is just a good card if you're going second, maybe you know you're going first and it's already like a slow game state in the first game. You can kind of pivot into that. Sphere Mode. I mean, Sphere Mode is just a great card. It's definitely more versatile than a lot of other options. I mean, I would definitely enjoy playing maybe 2 Game of Seal would be really good in this deck as well. But 1, maybe 2 Raw Sphere Mode would be is just fine. Next for the spells, we got 1 Forbidden Lance. You're running such big monsters in your main deck that if you're trying to make like big plays, and it's kind of a similar stun deck where basically they are running a bunch of spell and traps type stops towards your deck. You know, you can basically side in something like Forbidden Lance and work around that and, you know, sacrifice a little bit of attack points. But, I mean, when you have 4,000 attack, it really doesn't matter. Next is kind of a spicy tech Mistaken Accusation. So the effect reads, if your opponent has more total cards in their hand and their side of the field than you do, target 1 face-up card on the field. Neither player can activate cards with that name or their effects for the rest of this duel except that target. You can only activate 1 Mistaken Accusation per turn. So you basically hit Alistair, or you hit something like Invocation, or you hit Dragonic Diagram, you hit Astrograph's Sorcerer, because I mean, a lot of these decks, especially something like Pendulum Magicians, they're going to be, you know, going through their targets in terms of that particular card. So that's kind of what this effect means, is it'll negate basically every other following effect of the card that it targets, but that particular one cannot. So in a deck with such consistent removal, you're kind of able to make that sacrifice where, yeah, that's fine if, you know, that target can still go off, but chances are you're going to destroy it within the next turn or 2 turns, or that turn. But with something like Alistair, or a lot of the key cards, or something like Oviraptor, or what's the baby Triceratops, or whatever the baby one is, you are basically shutting that card, making it a dead draw. You know, they can maybe summon an attack with it, but their effects cannot go off. They cannot use it. You know, it basically, what is that? It's not royal oppression, but, prohibition. So it's kind of like prohibition in that sense. So next, we got 1 MST, 1 Dark Hole. I mean, these cards are always going to be good. If you need that extra removal, Dark Hole is good. MST is also good for that extra removal. I would like to change this into a Cosmic Cyclone, because Cosmic Cyclone is just inherently better, in my opinion. Next, 3 Creature Swap. So this is an interesting tech. I think that in this deck, the only real monsters that you don't want to give away are your Malefic Cyberend. So I mean, you can summon a Fossil Dyna and sit on it for a turn or 2 turns, however long. But if they, you know, are able to normal summon out a big monster, you're basically able to give that away, give away a Spy after you flip it, give away a Gravekeeper's Recruiter for their huge monsters, and that's just always going to be good. I mean, that really changes and kind of puts the game into your control, especially if they're going to waste resources to make big monsters. Then you want to basically have an out to that and kind of give them something shitty in return. Lastly, we got 3 traps, which are 1 full force virus, 1 deck dev, and then 1 heavy storm duster. This deck could definitely main deck either of these 2 cards. I believe that full force I have 9 total targets, and then deck dev I have some like 6. Yeah, 6, I believe. Yes, 6. They just don't work. It up with the extra deck. Grebo token. Decode Talker. Would like to add more links. 2 Stardust Dragons. I don't have them with me right now, but it's a staple considering you play Malefic Stardust. Next we got 1 Cyberun. I mean, same thing as Stardust. Staple. 1 Ancient Fairy. This is really good in this meta right now. I mean, popping a field spell, gaining 400, or yeah, 1,000, and then that special summon is also really good in this deck because you play pretty much 13, I believe. Yeah, 13 for lower monsters, so just makes sense. Leviathan, Crystal Chrononaut, Terabyte. I mean, any level 3s, you know, Leviair is probably excellent. I believe this is 12 cards extra deck, so definitely have more room. And then for the level 4 Xyz, Utopia, you know, definitely would add the next level up. Illuminite, good level, 3 level 4s. Amaterasu, it's basically Leviair. Deltaros, pop 1 every single turn. Ouroboros, discard from your opponent's hand. Definitely would add more 2 requirement level 4s instead of 3, just because Spy, it's an instant level 4 Xyz like Tornado Dragon. So that's the deck, guys. Appreciate your time. This is Chucky.